Right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much. Thanks to Curl, to David and Teresa for organizing this. And thank you all for being here. And I really appreciate this opportunity. And I'm looking forward to discussing where we are with graduate education and how the university, the provost office, and the dean of the graduate school, working with other units, academic units and other offices, how we're envisioning graduate education moving forward. So a few words about myself. I am a professor of sociology and I have an affiliated appointment in the Department of Management in Quinlan. I received my PhD from the University of Chicago in 2002, and I'm a scholar of the nonprofit sector. And I also study market-based solutions to social and environmental challenges. So very much in the spirit of Loyola's mission and the strategic plan. I joined Loyola from Boston University, where I'd been a professor of sociology and the associate dean of the graduate school there. I joined Loyola 2 years ago as the dean of the graduate school. And the prior provost, to Provost Callahan, asked if I would also take on the role of vice provost of graduate education for reasons that I will make clear in my presentation. So let me see if I can switch over. Okay. Yep, I can. And then, is it? Okay. Okay, great. All right. So I have now introduced myself. So why did the prior provost ask me to take on the position of vice provost of graduate education? So this sort of dual role, this dual responsibility is common in other universities where there is graduate education, not just in the graduate school, but in other schools or institutes or academic units at a university. And my understanding is that historically, Loyola has had a structure of graduate education where graduate programs and the graduate students in the graduate school were synonymous. But over the last several years, graduate programs, and let me clarify what I mean by graduate in a moment. Graduate programs have now been created very successfully in other schools, including Parkinson, School of Environmental Sustainability, and the School of Continuing Professional Studies. And so the role of Vice Provost of Graduate Education then is to work in very close collaboration with the deans and those who oversee graduate faculty who oversee other graduate programs in other schools to try and think about what are the points of intersection that are common to the graduate experience across Loyola, and to work towards collaboration and coordination. And just a few words of sort of terminology and conceptual clarification. So by graduate education here, I'm referring to one type of student and one type of educational curricular program. So we have undergraduates, we have professional programs, we have adult and continuing studies students, and then we have graduate programs and graduate students. And what typically is understood to characterize them is that they entail some type of engaged, extended engagement on the part of the student with the production of academic knowledge. So a thesis, a capstone project that's at the graduate level, and it tends to be more theoretically and oriented and more engaged with literature than something that's more professionally and oriented and more applied. And of course, there is slippage there. We have several programs, for example, in CAS, which would be considered professional programs, almost like computer science or data science, but they are in the graduate school. So let me talk a little bit about sort of how Loyola or how I am and how the Provost Office is envisioning how can we foster excellence in graduate education at Loyola, both in the graduate school and across the different academic units of Loyola. And then I would welcome your comments and thoughts and feedback based on your experiences in your programs and schools and potentially your experiences at other universities as well. So a quick overview, I'll begin by talking about the graduate school. And here I'll be focusing on an issue that's specific to the graduate school. So the graduate school, it hosts all PhD programs. It doesn't host all doctoral programs. Professional doctorates are located in other schools as well. So I'll be talking a little bit about where we are with PhDs in higher education at Loyola and how we can distinguish them from master's programs, which has not always been the case. And then I'll also talk about fostering graduate excellence across Loyola and the points of intersection that are common, at least based on conversations I've had, that are common across multiple units that have graduate programs, and talk a little bit about plans to move towards fostering graduate excellence across those units. So the first point of discussion is, where are we with our PhDs and master's and academic master's programs, and where do we want to go? And so I want to talk first about the PhD, where we are with the PhD in American higher education. And so one of the main challenges we face, so we have a number of PhD programs at Loyola. They're all extremely successful. They produce students who go on to wonderful things. We want to make sure to provide cohesive, coherent support for our graduate programs by supporting graduate faculty, supporting graduate program directors, and supporting graduate students by providing consistent and tailored, coherent support that's personal, academic, professional, and career development support. And we think with those types of support, students can continue to thrive and prosper, and it's also a meaningful relationship for graduate faculty. But we do face a challenge with PhDs, which is that there is this broader phenomenon going on in American higher education where we have the decline of tenure and the rise of precarious adjunct positions who are teaching. So we have a decline in the number of tenure track positions that are open to PhDs. Yet universities have not yet reckoned with their hiring. They haven't aligned their production of PhDs with their actual hiring practices. And as you can see from the slide on the screen, we see the decline of tenure basically being replaced by adjunct labor. Simultaneously, we see that PhDs continue to be produced in an ever and ever growing number. And that leads us in Loyola to question, what is our responsibility to our PhDs that we're producing? How can we best assist them when the labor market that they're entering isn't the traditional academic labor market that senior faculty knew and are experienced in and are equipped to help them find academic positions? So what can we do as a university and as the graduate school to assist our PhD students for success both while at Loyola, but also upon graduation for meaningful and impactful career outcomes? So our goal with the PhD programs then is working closely with Graduate Council, which is a representative of the graduate program directors, and working closely with graduate faculty, departments, and the schools in which the programs are located. We want to make sure that our PhD students receive quality, research-oriented education that leads to rewarding career outcomes. Towards that end, we want to make sure that the number of PhDs that we produce and the number of PhD programs we have, there's a fit between the employment opportunities for those graduates and the number of programs and students that we have. And so that's something that we're considering as we move forward, is how can we right-size PhD programs? And that will take place via the very important process of the academic program review, which always includes consideration of the status of graduate education in a department. We're also considering when new PhD programs are appropriate. So is there faculty strength? Is there market demand for graduates? Do we have the internal resources and capacity? And so the graduate school is always considering whether or not there is appropriate resources and capacity for new PhD programs. And then what I want to talk about today, most importantly, well, not most importantly, but what I want to talk about today is going back to the slide about the disjuncture between the number of PhDs that are being produced and the academic career options that are available to them, is how can we grow a culture and an infrastructure that supports our PhD students for the consideration and success in what's now called multiple career pathways and what used to be called careers beyond academia. So we have a number of initiatives that I want to talk about. So what do I mean by developing a culture and infrastructure around supporting PhD students for multiple career pathways? So based on research that's happened and best practices by those who have, our peers who have already begun this type of work, we know that for success, that PhD students have to be informed early about their multiple career options and that they're all considered valuable. We know that faculty have to be, if not already aware, brought up to date with the scope of the academic job market, and that they are supportive of graduate students considering careers beyond academia, while not placing the burden of supporting a graduate student on faculty, since faculty are academic faculty and largely have reported they don't feel equipped or knowledgeable about how to assist graduate students, understandably, for careers beyond academia, since that's not their professional expertise. We may want to consider the creation of more flexible paths to degree completion, where we incorporate internships, we incorporate other forms that demonstrate students' research and knowledge that is more applied or career-oriented. And at each stage of the career, the graduate career, we want to make sure that there are appropriate support services and experiences that go beyond simply academic support, but also extend to professional development and career support as well. And one of the things I'd be interested in hearing from you is if you have experiences with other practices that also can help to develop this culture and infrastructure of multiple career pathways. So some examples of what we're doing in the graduate school. So we received a grant from the Council of Graduate Schools, which essentially uses professional grant writing as a pilot career option for humanities PhD students. And we're using that as a way to think about how best to build out programming so that students are introduced to and given some engagement with and internship or externship experiences with those different occupations. And based on the learning experience we have with this, we'll then seek to roll this out with other common non-academic career options for PhD students, starting with the humanities. So we have an academic grant writing workshop that's open, that's currently being offered in the fall. In the spring, we'll have a professional grant writing workshop where students will be able to see what professional grant writing is like as an occupation. And in the summer, there'll be extern internships for humanities PhD students in nonprofit university offices and foundations oriented around grant writing and fundraising, and that will include a funding amount for the students who participate. And again, this is all thanks to the Council of Graduate Schools, which is very involved in thinking about how can universities develop support for multiple career pathways. Towards that end, we have a new staff position in the graduate school who will be developing this professional development support. And she's doing this more broadly than just for PhDs. She's doing this for all graduate students, and all graduate students from across the university are invited to participate in these programming. And she'll be reaching out to other schools to figure out how best to collaborate around what is necessary to complement the programming that those schools already offer to their graduate students. So if you haven't heard from her yet, she will be reaching out. And there is also or soon will be a new Associate Vice President for Student Success, will also oversee Master's Professional Development Programming in the Office of Student Success. So that should complement and also be coordinated with the work of our graduate school staff position, and the efforts that are happening in individual schools as well to support their graduate students. The challenges, of course, of developing multiple career pathways for PhD students is the presence of faculty and awareness and support, this making sure that faculty understand that students' options are limited, a balance of students' expectations of and preparation for multiple career outcomes. We don't want students to sort of simultaneously be preparing for a career in academia and a career, for example, as a professional grant writer. It's not possible to be preparing for two careers at once. We want students to be aware and to have some engagement with potential career options. And we also want to have the university and schools directing appropriate resources and leadership that signal and that can deliver appropriate services and support for careers and beyond academia. And again, at the end of this, I would love to hear more about other challenges you think are experienced around PhDs considering and having success in multiple career pathways. So that's PhDs. We want to make sure that they have quality research-based academic experience. We recently increased the PhD stipend for 9 months to $28,000, and the PhD stipend for 12 months to $34,000 across all campuses. We recently, the university recently included dental insurance for assistants and those receiving fellowships. We in the graduate school have increased our funding for research and travel, and we also have funded opportunities over the summer for either research or mentoring of undergraduate and master's students. So we're really working to inculcate a culture and infrastructure and resources for success for our PhD students. So turning to master's programs, particularly as they exist in the graduate school, is again Master's programs that entail academic endeavors, and so we want to ensure the academic quality of all of our programs. And we want to also make sure that our programs are sort of segmented into two types in terms of their viability. So some master's programs are oriented towards the provision of a master's degree with students expecting to go on to doctoral education. And so we want to make sure that those programs are well resourced, that they have the resources they need for students to have the research experience and the training so they can apply for and be successful in doctoral programs. But we also, both in the graduate school and other schools, we also have master's programs that are more professionally oriented, where we want students to have the education, but also the training, the networking, and the skills in order to go on and have a financially sustainable, impactful career in industry, in the nonprofit sector, for government, in the private sector. We want them to have careers that are both where they're going out and doing good and doing well. So we want to make sure that all of our master's programs are oriented either for doctoral success or for employment success upon graduation. So to that end, we also have a mission from the university to grow master's enrollment with the upcoming what's called the upcoming demographic cliff for undergraduates. So for the university to maintain its current revenue budget, we need to grow enrollment, and so at the master's level. So thinking about creating new programs that have market demand, and market demand means both student interest, but also employment opportunities that are impactful, both economically and socially or environmentally. We need to consider strategic tuition assistance that is both need and merit-based in order to encourage students to join our wonderful master's programs. And we also want to ensure comprehensive and tailored professional and career development support, and also personal support as well, that's tailored for graduate students, and it's not undergraduate support that's available to graduate students. We really, in the graduate school, are being strong advocates for the specific needs of graduate students when it comes to the supports offered by other university offices across the university. So when we think about what's going on with graduate education across the university, there are several initiatives that are either underway or there's strong interest in beginning, particularly around the universities, following the university's new strategic plan. So the first one is diversifying our graduate student population. We have a graduate student population that, in general, in the aggregate, aligns with trends around the different socio-demographics of graduate students overall. We know also that that's doesn't reflect the city of Chicago, the wonderful diversity of the city of Chicago, which we intend to sort of reflect and to embody in our student population. And we also know that for our students to go forth and make an impact, that we need to have graduate alumni who are coming from the backgrounds and part of the groups and communities that they're seeking to assist. And we also know that research is most prolific and most successful when people who are engaging in research come from diverse backgrounds. So for a variety of reasons, there are, including the strategic plan, research benefits, the impact of the work that our graduates will go out and do, having a diverse graduate student population is incredibly important. And so we need to be directing resources both at the program and the school and the university level in order to diversify our graduate student population and to have students from different backgrounds also have success here, to retain them, to have them graduate, and to go on and have successful careers. So how can we do that? How can we ensure that graduate students from historically underrepresented backgrounds consider Loyola, join Loyola, and have success at Loyola and beyond? So of course, recruitment is possible. So there are a number of initiatives across different schools to develop pipeline programs for a specific discipline, what I call bridge programming, which is summer programming or introductory programming before the first fall semester or spring semester starts. In the graduate school, we've also begun a conversation about how we can best utilize our fellowship and gift funding to incentivize graduate students from underrepresented students to join us and have the support needed for success. And finally, in the graduate school, we've had very serious conversations about holistic admissions. And I'm pleased to report among the graduate programs on the Lakeside campuses that there are no graduate programs that employ the GRE anymore. So those are the kinds of moves that we've made and that we're interested in continuing to make. Bringing historically underrepresented students of color to Loyola is irresponsible unless there's a culture and support and infrastructure and resources available to them when they're here so that they graduate in a timely way, they have success, they feel successful and accomplished, and they go on to do great things in the world. So the graduate school, working with other offices and schools, is working to develop tailored and comprehensive services and support at the program, school, and the program and school level, and also as provided by other university offices in terms of personal support, academic support, and professional and career development support. The last component of this initiative is the development of what I'm calling a DEI dashboard, which will be created by the Office of Institutional Effectiveness, working with the Graduate and Professional Enrollment Management Office, which will essentially be tracking programs and schools in terms of their socio-demographic composition when students apply, which is the first time socio-demographic information is collected from them, when they're admitted to the program, when they matriculate, and then statistics on time to degree and graduation rates for graduate students in order to see where we're doing well and maybe where additional support and attention should be given in order to ensure that we have a diverse graduate student body, and also that we're retaining and graduating students in an equitable and consistent manner across different socio-demographic groups. And this extends as well to issues around gender and STEM, as well as historically underrepresented populations in other, across all disciplines and departments and schools. Something I've talked about extensively already is that we really want to make sure, this is where the attention to PhDs having multiple career pathways dovetails so neatly with the attention to growing master's enrollment, because we're really only going to have good word of mouth. We're only going to be able to be capable of continuing to grow our master's populations if they're having satisfactory experiences here at Loyola, and if they're going on to exciting career opportunities. And so in the graduate school, we are partnering with programs and faculty to grow career development support. So we'll be implementing individual development plans for all of our graduate students starting shortly, probably in the fall of 23. We have the CGS grant as an example of what's going on at the PhD level. And then we also have a number of events planned with the Career Development Center and via the Alumni Office with, and I'll share those in a moment. And we also plan to much better engage our alumni through the new hub software and also through workshops where we're asking them to come back and really share their experiences, how they translated academic knowledge into professional knowledge, tips on networking, tips on career exploration, and really getting our students inspired and able to see that they have multiple career options available to them. So, for example, the graduate school is hosting, and all graduate students across the university are welcome to attend a grant writing workshop, as I've noted. We also have in the fall a workshop on translating academic experience for non-academic cover letters and resumes. So how do you actually convert the very specialized, sometimes esoteric knowledge that you are sort of the one expert in? How do you convey what you're doing, your knowledge, and how that might be useful in a more applied setting in cover letters and resumes? And then also hosting a PhD alumni from the Department of Philosophy who now works as a policy analyst around health issues for the federal government. Philippa Friedman will be visiting, and that could be of interest for graduate students from multiple departments and schools across the university who either have a philosophy interest or a health interest as well. Moving on, a third university initiative, which is well underway and many of you may have heard of, is that we currently have a system at Loyola where there's a single catalog for undergraduate students, which outlines what it is to be in a degree program, what's expected of you, but also what are the policies, academic policies that hold for you as a student at Loyola. In contrast, currently, at Loyola, at the graduate level, we have no place that's a kind of definitive source of data on what a degree looks like. Independent programs can list those on their website. A school or an academic unit can list it on its website. There's nothing at the university level that tells you definitively as a student or a faculty or graduate program director what exactly is required for a student to complete a particular degree. So there's a graduate studies catalog, which the Associate Provost Robin Mallett is leading the development of, and I don't know the timeline, but the process has begun, that will have all degree program requirements and also historically all degree program requirements. But it will also hold academic policies and procedures as they relate to graduate students. So this has two benefits. First, many of you may have had the experience of something happens to a graduate student, there's a crisis or a challenge, and the only policies that are listed on the university website relate to undergraduates. And for whatever reason, it may be about research outside the classroom, it may be about a conference paper, whatever the issue is, undergraduate policy simply isn't applicable. So as we're going to have a sort of tailored, earmarked set of academic policies that are for graduate students. And we'll also be moving over time as it works for individual schools, given their accreditation and disciplinary and professional commitments. We're also going to be moving to creating a single set of policies for graduate students so that the experience of being a graduate student, regardless of what program you're in, is somewhat equitable. So issues to do, for example, with leave when someone has a child, right? What does it mean to be able to take time off of your coursework if you have a child in the middle of a semester, right? That should be equitable across programs. It should be the same experience. So that's an example of over time we'll be moving to creating, as appropriate, as relevant, a single set of academic policies for students, for graduate students. The fourth initiative, and the last point that I'll make, is that we want to recognize that for many graduate students, but not all graduate students, research is really an inherent component of why they're here and what it means to be successful while at Loyola and as they move forward, either in a doctoral program or as they do research in an applied setting across the nonprofit, private, or public sectors. And so, as I noted before, in the graduate school, we've used our gift funds to increase research and conference funding. We've on occasion offered summer funding so students can continue to do research over the summer. One of our goals reflecting sort of the state of knowledge is we really want to foster interdisciplinarity and thinking about ways that we can make sure that in coursework and in research that students can pursue interdisciplinarity at various stages of their graduate career. So we just, for example, created a form that clarifies how students can take courses outside of their own home school. We want to be clear about what it means for graduate faculty, for faculty who are working with students across schools. What does that look like, and how does that get recognized and rewarded and counted? And we also want to work with centers like Curl in order to ensure that the important work they do is incorporated into the graduate student experience and graduate programs to the extent possible. And then finally, we have this exciting new initiative where the fellowship office, which is intended to support undergraduate and graduate students as they seek external funding to support their research, which is incredibly important for graduate students, particularly PhD students once they place out of funding. That's actually now there's a new faculty director. I'm happy to report Dr. Eric Chan Tin from the Department of Computer Science. He'll be hosting that. There's more resources, more staffing available there. And we really hope that schools will work and programs will work with the fellowship office to really inculcate a culture of and to encourage students to seek funding for sponsored research. So those are the main initiatives, and I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to open the floor for questions and comments and feedback, and I'll be taking notes. So I look forward to your thoughts. Let me stop share. I see 2 comments in chat already.
Yeah, that's me being pushy, seeing an opportunity to talk about another Curl Friday morning seminar down the road. Folks can take a look at that. But I will from the control booth around the corner from you, I will sort of say, let's open it up to questions, and feel free to unmute yourselves. You can raise your hands virtually if you wish, but otherwise just jump in, and I think we're a small enough crowd we can manage it. And Teresa, I know you can hear me. I'll let you sort of manage any in the room questions and how to do that. Thanks.
Sound good.
David, I just saw what you entered, and I'm wondering if I'm going to put you in touch with our staff member who's in charge of professional development, because I think there's a lot of overlap in the type of just so she can be sure to market and also orient what she's doing in conjunction with what the important work that Krill is doing.
Perfect. Ruben.
Hey, thank you very much, Emily, for your work and for presenting it. My question is about PhD programs. Are there some general, is there a general pattern you have in mind for sort of seeking out where those new PhD programs will be, or specific things that you're looking for in new PhD programs? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about that.
Thanks. And Ruben, can you introduce yourself? I'm still relatively new to Loyola.
Oh, yeah. I'll turn my video on. I've been having an early lunch. I was up early with my kids this morning, so I don't want everyone to see me eating. I'm Ruben Keller, Graduate Program Director in the School of Environmental Sustainability. Caveat is I've been Graduate Program Director for like 6 or 7 weeks, so I am still very much
welcome.
learning a whole lot of stuff.
Right, of course. Yeah, thanks. It's a great question. So I think, there's a couple different criteria that are considered. One is faculty size and strength. So we do have in other PhD programs, by and large, a particular ratio of PhD students to faculty students. We know that PhDs do best when they have, when there's a cohort model. At least that's my argument, right? So you need to have at least 2 or 3 students per year. So you're not bringing in individual students. And then you need an ample number of research active, research oriented faculty, not necessarily tenured track or tenure stream faculty, if you will. They can be professional, professional is not the right word, but whatever language is used at Loyola, apologies, clinical research faculty. But there needs to be ample size and sort of demonstration of research productivity, research engagement. So that's one component. The second component is that this is a continued theme of the presentation, is that there needs to be meaningful employment opportunities for PhDs, right? So we need to be able to see that a PhD student would be able to go out and have a something that's in economically viable career option. And it doesn't have to be in academia by any stretch. It could easily be in other sectors or other spaces of society. That's a second criteria. And then a third criteria is one that reflects sort of Loyola's financial model, which is we don't have a large endowment. We're very much tuition driven. And so PhD programs, quite frankly, like Canadian, so it's always uncomfortable to like do brass tacks, conversations, but a PhD program which looks like the funding model of STEM, which is that faculty grants cover either all or a great portion of the costs of having PhD students, at least once the students have completed coursework, would be very attractive at Loyola. So those would be the 3 considerations. Is there research support? Are there employment opportunities? And what's the additional funding cost for the university?
Thank you.
Thanks. Mary Margaret, I'm losing my voice. I'm choked up. I'm so excited to hear your question. I'm choking up.
Well, thank you. I'm Mary Margaret Sharpucci. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs in the Parkinson School of Health Sciences and Public Health, and that's a mouthful. Emily, I'll apologize up front that my question is not all this well formed. It's more of a general question. As we look to the growth of practice doctorates, how does that fit into all that you presented, and how should we be thinking about those as we look to perhaps adding those to the Parkinson menu?
Yes, thanks, Maria. I'm so sorry. I omitted that from this discussion because practice doctorates are a very important part of the sort of mission of Loyola and the ways in which Loyola produces knowledge and produces graduates who go on to sort of affect meaningful social and environmental change. So very much welcome. Again, similar considerations. Is there research support available from faculty, size of faculty to student ratio, meaningful employment outcomes? You know, we've had over the last couple of years, some proposals for practice-based, you know, more professional doctorates, if you will, where there is we have a unit of the university with any new program. They do a landscape analysis to see what are the employment opportunities available to graduates, and also how many students are enrolled in existing programs of that type, right? So we need to see that there's student demand, and we need to see that there's market demand. So we don't want to think about, so the supposed plus side of some practice-based doctorates is that students pay, so let's just let them come, and if they choose to pay, why don't we have it? It's more revenue. But really, again, this sense of ethical responsibility of having meaningful employment outcomes for students. So it's a smaller pool of criteria than a new PhD, because the presumption is that students will find it meaningful, will find that the return on investment of, I hate to use finance terminology, but the return on investment of them paying the tuition for a practice-based doctorate is worth it for them, and then us verifying that that is indeed the case, so that we feel sort of morally comfortable with offering that type of doctoral degree.
Thank you. Thank you.
And don't be offended, Philippe, my voice is back. I'm as eager as I was a moment ago to hear your question.
Oh, no, you're good. Thank you, Emily. Thank you all for sharing your wisdom and experience. My background, I'm originally from Mexico, but I have been at Loyola for 22 years. First as a student PhD from theology, and now working at the IPS Institute of Platform Studies. So that is my context and background. I have let me see if I can phrase my question. One of the Loyola initiatives is obviously what you presented, number 4, about research. So my question is, PhD is very much focused on research and specialization. That is, I mean, how do we balance excuse me, the specialization on the one hand with the interdisciplinarity of which you spoke, number 2. And the second, based on my experience, I'm working also with international students, with the globalization and internationalization of higher education. How do you balance that? It's part 1 of my question. I have a part B of my question.
Okay. Thank you for the question about interdisciplinarity. So I think the way that, and I've been discussing this with the deans of other schools, with the Vice Provost for Research, Sunny Singh, and with the Provost as well. And I think that and then the prior Provost was also very committed to moving towards interdisciplinarity. I think the way in which Loyola typically is talking about interdisciplinarity is first a caution that interdisciplinarity for a PhD student can often actually penalize them, right? So we have these kind of cognitive classifications that exist in academia that are quite long-standing. And so when students engage in interdisciplinary work, it can lead to, they can violate what Kant called the categorical imperative, right? Which is like they can't get a job because they don't align with any of the categories, the groups that are hiring, right? So we want to make sure that we're mentoring students in a way where interdisciplinarity is not affecting their employment opportunities. And I don't know if you share that with me, but that's a concern I have and I've heard from others. But the ways in which interdisciplinarity matters and should be implemented is that we have these disciplinary categories that have been around, for decades, and they don't align with the cutting edge ways in which research is being conducted and knowledge is being produced, particularly when we look to, the sort of top R1 universities that have the endowments so that they have the resources and the flexibility to kind of implement new structures that are more interdisciplinary in nature. And so it's a question of sort of thinking about where's the state of knowledge across disciplines, and how can we move to remove the bureaucratic barriers that prevent faculty and students from being able to work together across academic units. So, you know, one of the things that always comes up when you talk about interdisciplinarity is faculty say, well, if I teach in another school, how will my courses, who will pay for that? And how will my courses count for tenure, right? So we want to have some really, and universities struggle with this, but we want to have some really clear policies to make sure that if we say we value interdisciplinarity, then faculty who teach across units do indeed have that recognized and compensated accordingly. So that's my answer, is that interdisciplinarity without penalty for a graduate student, removing bureaucratic barriers, and also reflecting the current state of knowledge production around particular sort of loci of longstanding disciplines. The internationalization, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. You have a question. The internationalization, I'd be curious to hear more about what you're thinking. I mean, the only thing I have to say in response to that is that I know international students at Loyola, they're a small proportion of the graduate student population. There isn't a lot of infrastructure for them. And under Vice Provost, I'm blanking on his name, we have a new office around international and community engagement where the ISSS office is located, and that's been recently staffed really with a focus on supporting international graduate students, with a mission to support international graduate students. But if you're thinking of something else, I would love to hear it.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if you're thinking about Scott Henriksen on Global.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the question of internalization goes along with the interdisciplinary of higher education. So we focus on a very specific, specialized field. So as you explained on the interdisciplinary piece, also when we move education into a global or international context, the shape and scope of the specialization also shifts a little bit, because specializations may mean something different in different international contexts. So that is why I'm wondering, how could we balance the specialization also with the internationalization or globalization of higher education? But the other aspect or related to this question of internalization is because number one, the recruitment of international students, and that is tied with tuition. So the cost of tuition in the US is extremely high as compared to other parts in the world. And also the salaries for international scholars, faculty. So it goes for students, for prospective students, but also for faculty. So that is the piece I'm trying to explore, how to develop this implications and challenges of the internationalization, globalization of higher ed.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I completely agree with you that there's a strong financial component to internationalization. In the graduate school, we are fortunate to have part of our budget go towards assistantships for graduate students at the master's and PhD level. And, you know, considering students' financial opportunities outside the university is often something that is considered, right? So international students can't work outside the university. So having a stipend goes a lot further to make higher education viable for them, for some people, for some graduate program directors in their decision making. I think there's also a question of, like, you know, we want to be producing knowledge that reflects the global world, and that's very expensive to do so. And so what are the funding mechanisms we're going to use to support graduate students and faculty in order to be able to do cross-national or international research? And that's like that's like above my pay grade. But we do offer support for research, for students to do research funding, and some do international research with that funding. But it's certainly a very, very costly endeavor. And there's much more we could be doing to support international research.
Thank you.
Teresa, I'm going to speak to you and your disembodied voice here. Any questions in the room there?
No, we're all set right now.
Okay. Other questions from anybody, anywhere in the world? Speaking of international. You know, I'll jump in and sort of say, for those of you who don't know curl, we do community-based collaborative participatory research. So after 26 years of doing this, I can say, we're experts in a variety of things, including being transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and also preparing students for both for traditional academic positions and non-traditional academic positions. So I part of the reason we asked Emily to come in is we are kind of quietly but firmly committed to graduate education at Loyola because it's in our best interest. We're a very small shop. We have faculty and staff now. Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we have 7 of us, and that's not too far off of where we've always been. Maybe we've been a little bit higher at 11 or 12. Graduate students have been the key sort of linchpin, keystone part of what we're doing. And we think that, and you'll have to see what our colleagues on the 18th of November come back then and see if they disagree with me, but we think that we've been able to, and they've been able to chart that course, I think, that specialization in a particular field while also being transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and having it rooted in something. And the secret sauce, the special ingredient is not that we're brilliant, though we are. It's the community partners. I mean, that's what gives us that ability to bridge different things. And it's not for all people. It's not for all PhD students. It's not for all master's students. But I do think there is something to be said for that, examples like curl, and we are not the only ones at the university, really trying to think of creative ways to further that kind of embedded experience to kind of answer some of the questions that I think you've raised today, Emily, and some others have raised in their questions.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's absolutely right. There's no need to reinvent the wheel in the graduate school, and we have models of success in other units of the university. And so we look forward to collaborating with you and learning from you about, how you produce this alumni panel with these people who have gone on to amazing jobs, and demonstrating to, using the students who've worked with you and their success to demonstrate to graduate students who aren't familiar with curl, who don't have the benefit of working for you, what opportunities are available to them, and how they can engage with research and think about their lives moving forward. So yeah, thank you.
I think the other thing for me is this tension within Loyola and within higher ed of the master's track, the PhD, the terminal master's for many, but the MA, the master's level, and the PhD, how to balance that. I mean, for a huge part of curl's history, we would be able to say, well, if you got your master's degree, you'd be able to go and work at XYZ organization as a researcher. It's increasingly true that because there are so many folks getting PhDs who are not taking the traditional or can't take, don't have the options to take the traditional academic route, that
Right.
more and more job descriptions are saying, we want an evaluation expert in, sort of the intersection of environmental studies and education, community education, master's required, PhD preferred. So it's just kind of, I appreciate you all in the graduate school and throughout the university kind of helping us all think about how to begin addressing that, because I shared this with Emily in another conversation, but we're not the only ones. Loyola has a unique spin on it, and our economic model and whatnot changes the conversation versus, Harvard or U of M or Georgetown or whatever. But yet I know from colleagues at Notre Dame, there's sort of at least within certain departments, a grappling with this, okay, should we be telling them to get master's degrees when in fact they're going to be out of here and they're really going to be finding a job market that says, no, we need a PhD. So I think that's going to be a salient topic for several years, probably
Fascinating.
decades to come.
Right. That's okay. Well, I may need more data than that, David, but I'll look into it. Thank you. Fascinating. Making a note.
Other questions or comments from the room or from online room?
I do actually have a question. This is Teresa, who you saw earlier. You said something about master's assistantships. Is that, I'm a little out of the loop, but I was a master's student here at Loyola through sociology and finished that and then got hired at Pearl.
Right.
Which I'm, that's partly why I came here to get a master's, to get more layers behind my name to work at Pearl. So it all worked out really well. But I am very curious about this master's assistantship because that would really have helped me.
Yes.
With funding. So
Yes.
is that new? Is that something being developed? Is it or augmented? Or yeah,
Right.
a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I believe that there are a couple schools that offer some form of a assistantship that's available to master's students. The graduate school is not alone, but ours are limited to, in the graduate school, ours are limited to master's programs where there's no PhD affiliated with it. Just to make our dollars sort of not go the farthest, but recognizing that the traditional model of a PhD is that you have full funding we offer full funding for 5 years. So, and recognizing that faculty in those other schools are still research productive, they're still teaching. And so the graduate students in those master's programs are sort of serving as kind of PhD students in effect. So that's why in sociology, yeah. And I recognize that sort of paid funding opportunities at the master's level is incredibly valuable. So, or teaching experience. So if we had more funding, for sure, we would have those opportunities available across a greater number of master's programs.
Yeah, and what actually helped me was that I had a fellowship through Pearl while I was a graduate. So I was, as Katie's also in the room. And David, were you a graduate fellow at any point? Is that one of your titles?
Me and the dinosaurs before curl existed.
Yeah, so that did help, and that was like some sort of like master's, like and I got to do research and so forth while getting my degree. But yeah, that wasn't, for instance, through the graduate school.
Right.
That was through Pearl.
That was too cool. Yeah. And I will say more broadly to Teresa's point that, and David and I have discussed this as well as conversations with other units at Loyola, is like, as we think about what does it mean to get a PhD and what kinds of professional development experiences should you have as a condition of receipt of a assistantship, do we want to rethink the existing models, which is you're either doing academic research for a faculty member or you're assisting and teaching? Is there something that could be as relevant based on student interests or the discipline? Are there more applied, more, sort of like hands-on ways of engaging with research that are akin to what Curl Fellowships offer to our graduate students? So that's certainly something we're continuing to discuss and consider.
Other thoughts or questions? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, and this is another thought. I wonder if you have some information about the rate of adjuncts that Loyola is hiring PhD. And the reason I'm asking this is because probably one of the things that Loyola could do, especially with our commitment with social justice, is how to put it, increase the number of full-time professors vis-a-vis adjuncts, because we know what happens. I have been in that position many times before, and I think if we grow the rate of full-time versus adjunct, we could, in a sense, respond in multiple ways to the pull of to the market, just to put it briefly.
Right.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I explained myself, but
yeah, no. I mean, I think so. I think universities, took on this kind of post-Fortis model of like getting rid of workers that I'm a sociologist, so this is something that I study. I'm not speaking for Loyola, I'm speaking for higher education in general, which is a move towards thinking about cost cutting by changing the employment structure with instructors and employment relationship with those who teach, right? I do think so precarious labor, right? Adjuncts. I do think a number of universities are realizing that the transaction costs of managing adjuncts and then the ethical implications of having adjuncts, both of those are pushing universities to actually rethink this and to have more longstanding contracts. Like, for example, the rise of tenure track clinical and tenure track teaching faculty now, right? It actually sort of has been argued to save universities time and money. And I'm not suggesting cost efficiency is always the best criteria for making decisions by any stretch, but that is what universities are thinking about. And I agree that Loyola, this is not something I'm involved with at all as Dean of the Graduate School, but I can see the point you're making, which is given our mission, what is our responsibility to our employees? I think that's a valid question to ask. I don't have that data.
Any other questions? David, if you want to go ahead.
Wrap it up.
Sure, I can do it, seeing as I'm on camera. Yeah, no, Emily, any final thoughts from you? Any
Just to say
any
that
requests, any asks of the folks who are here?
No, I do. I've been here 2 years. 1 year was entirely online via COVID. I'm not coming to being dean from being a faculty with lots of pre-existing networks. So I'm really would love to have the chance to use presentations like this as a way to continue to talk with people. So I hope you will, if you have any interest in having further conversation, any comments, negative or positive, I hope you'll reach out. I would love to meet with you, talk with you, email with you as you would like. But thanks again for your time, and I look forward to working with you moving forward.
Well, thank you for taking time out of what I know is a busy schedule to join us today, and for your leadership in this. Having been here 27 years now, I know that I know a little about the path there that you're on. So thank you for your work, and thank you all for joining us in the room and online, and everyone have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks again.